Hey, everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod. Excited to welcome Ryan Hammer, host of the BlueBlooded Podcast. Today's show is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook, your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch. Whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line, you'll find all the odds you need on the FanDuel app. Easy to download. You can get started today. Ryan comes by way of recommendation from my son, who loves his analytics of college hoops over on Instagram. I definitely found a number of videos very interesting, and I think that Spartan fans like you will also. You can find his stuff on Instagram at RyanHammer9, and the show obviously can be found in any podcast player you want. Just search for Blue Blooded. You'll find it there. So, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the Final Four on the schedule.
Yeah, I appreciate having me on, and obviously, like we said over beforehand, shout out to your son, I guess, for the recommendation. I like it.
Yeah, no, well, he's a young guy. You can see that my hair. I'm not, on Instagram. I don't. And I think Rod's pretty much the same, but we don't quite understand it quite so well. But so let's get started with the first thing I found really interesting when I was watching videos is it's kind of a teaser, but you met with the video crew at, I think it was Florida, who are charged with deciding whether play should be challenged or not. We've talked about that a little bit in our show because it's a new rule this season, obviously. And the interesting thing, of course, unlike football and baseball, there's not really downtime in basketball. So you have to make a decision pretty quickly, right? I mean, there's a dead ball, but you can kind of fart around for a little bit. But essentially, you have to make a decision within 20 seconds, maybe 15, on whether you're going to challenge it, potentially lose a timeout. Can you kind of go through the process of what you learned with that interview with the team? But it was Florida, right? But what they do and sort of, I guess, how that process works?
Yeah, and it was at Florida. And listen, I know Todd Golden is one of the most analytical coaches in the country, and I would figure that there were things that I would learn by connecting with the entire staff that I did not know beforehand. I didn't think it was going to be on challenges, though. I'll tell you that much. It was funny. It was a young kid who was one of their video coordinators. The video coordinators are as hard of working people as you will find in all of basketball and sports in general. They are doing everything during games to get their film up. They already do this before their challenge rule, right? They get the film as fast as they can so the coaches can watch on the sideline and adjust things as fast as they can on the fly. The challenge stuff, like you said, if you think about it, if you watch coaches on the sideline, they will always fake a sub to go in and then be like, am I challenging it? No, he's not. Okay. Don't actually go in. And they throw him back to the bench. So they try to waste as much time as they can. So not only is the software always going to be on some kind of lag, I think it's 3 seconds they said they have, which sounds like nothing, but it's a massive, massive difference.
Oh yeah.
But they have these analytical charts that they made. The first that I've heard of, everyone that's reached out to me, coaches and stuff like that, they had never heard of it before. So I will, I guess, unofficially say it's the first challenge analytics that you will find in college basketball for now. But yeah, based on your confidence level, how much time is in the shot clock, and what the score is, and how much time is left in the game, basically should you challenge it. And there are different analytical things of yes or no when you just plot it where all your data points are. And it's super interesting to see that because they say even if I'm 100% confident in something, it's not worth it, because they use an example of there were 5 seconds left in the shot clock and it was an out of bounds call under the basket. 5 seconds, and the expected points per possession, the efficiency that they're likely to get out of that is so close to 0 points because of the shot clock that no matter how confident they were in the challenge, they're not going to challenge those calls. So that was kind of a little bit of a rant on it, but super interesting to learn that coaches are adjusting on the fly and as much as they can. And that's what we've seen in the sport in the last few years. If you don't adjust, you kind of get left behind. So
for sure. What do you see as do they go over things? Obviously you mentioned different times of the game. I feel like a game just recently, Michigan State, there's a weird out of bounds play right away within the first 2 minutes of the game. I mean, is that when they're going to say they're 20 seconds the shot clock, we go ahead and challenge it right now when it's 4-3 or something like that? Or is there not a value in it? Or they just worry about just how many points you get in a possession?
So they said that if you're 100% confident in a challenge, in your first challenge, you do it no matter what time it is, because based on their math, you only have a 14% chance that you're going to even get a second challenge opportunity at that confidence level at any point in the game. So playing basic math there, you have a chance to get an extra possession, you go and you do it no matter what. So they would say yes, but that is mighty early. So he did say that there is some kind of you need a gut every now and then because it's so quick that you need to make gut calls when it's on the borderline of things. So maybe not, depending on the coach you ask.
It's certainly interesting because in the past, I mean, you still see this, but players always pointing, it's our ball or whatever when the refs rule the other way. I think they're a little bit more careful now about, how insistent they are that the ball's off the opponent. Like, I think you always make that call as a player, just hoping the ref kind of goes along with you when you may know it wasn't right. And I feel like there's a little bit less of that maybe now. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like refs are much more patient in their calls, I've noticed, because they can't just go to the monitor, obviously. I've noticed a lot. What game was I watching? I think it was yesterday, the Nebraska-Illinois game. And I've noticed a lot where one ref will make a call and it looks like you might go the other way, and then one ref will come from the other side of the court and they talk about it and confer a lot more than I've noticed. That's just a gut feeling, but I feel like you're right on that.
So, sticking with the theme of analytics and college basketball, what is the trapezoid of excellence? Can you explain that concept to our listeners who maybe aren't familiar?
Of course, yes. It's the popularity of it has gone beyond what I ever expected or anticipated. The trapezoid excellence comes off this theory that I eventually proved basically right through historical performance, that the faster or slower you play in terms of pace, the better you need to be at that style to be able to win a national championship and succeed at the highest level in March. Not saying that if you play really fast, you can't go to the Final Four. It's just saying based on all the historical champions of recent years and really the last 10 to 20 years, that if you play super fast, super slow, you're unlikely to win the national championship, but you can still make runs based on your matchups, because we all know crazy stuff happens in March. But yeah, the trapezoid, basically, I was watching an Alabama game a couple of years ago, and I was like, God, they are playing so fast. Like, is this sustainable? Like, can they actually win like this? It might have been 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And I was like, they're good. They're obviously unbelievable. But I feel like at some point they're just going to get slowed down out of their game, and then they're going to flop in the tournament. And that has been what happened to a team like that, where whether it's in the Final Four or the Elite Eight or Sweet 16, they're a really good example of that on the fast side. And Iowa this year, and Drake last year, and Virginia in past years on the slower side of things. But basically saying you have to be adaptable to be able to win a national championship in March, because you spend 3 months or 2 months playing the same teams in your conference that you're used to playing, very similar styles to you for the most part. Then you get to March. Not only are you playing teams from all over the place that you've never played before, all these different styles from all these different places, but you're on back-to-backs with less scouts and kind of on fatigue and things like that. So being adaptable and being adjustable throughout the year will prepare you better for March so that you can play against any kind of opponent.
I think it's really interesting that you've been able to demonstrate that mathematically, so to speak, because I think that's something that the Michigan State fan base is very familiar with conceptually, because it's something that Tom Izzo's talked about for 3 decades. And if you look at, I think maybe the most important reason for the success that he's had in March has been exactly what you just talked about. Over the course of 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, you've got to be capable of winning in different ways, because you're going to face wildly divergent styles of teams. And if you're locked into just playing one way, when you get faced with somebody who can force you into a different kind of game, it can get tough. So it's great to see that there's actually analytical support for that concept, because to me, and I imagine to a lot of our listeners, intuitively, it makes perfect sense because we've seen it. I mean, no better example of this actually than the last time Michigan State won a national title in 2000 in the Final Four. They play their semifinal game against Dick Bennett's Wisconsin, who was the slowest of the slow, and it was the 4th time they'd played that year.
Right.
They turn around in the national title game and they're facing Billy Donovan's Florida, and early Billy Donovan especially was full court trapping pressure, try to play as fast as you can. You couldn't have a bigger contrast over consecutive games than Michigan State faced in that Final Four, and they won them both with relative ease. Actually, the Florida one was a little easier.
That's a good point, yeah.
Where does Michigan State rank this year on that trapezoid? Are they in the trapezoid of excellence or on the verge?
Last time I did it, they were in it. I have to adjust it and update it. I don't think that they would have slid down or slower. They were on the slower side of it, and just enough quality-wise at that pace. They were right next to, at the time at least, Illinois, Purdue, Virginia. I'd imagine Illinois has taken a pretty big leap ahead of that bunch, but Virginia, Purdue, Michigan State are probably somewhere in the similar spot that they were last week. I think I did it. So.
And so pretty much the y-axis, the one going up, is how efficient you are offensively. Is that
It's
kind of
both sides of the ball? Overall net rating, adjusted net
gotcha.
rating for opponent. Yeah.
Okay.
It's.
All right.
I think pace is funny. People ask me why not just offense if it's them on the ball. I'm like, well, pace is a defensive thing also. You can slow
Right.
teams down by pace. Purdue did it versus Alabama. I remember where they kind of give this half court or 3/4 court press just to make them take 8 seconds to cross half court, so
Yep.
they start their sets a little slower
Yeah.
and later in the shot clock, and therefore in turn get less possessions. Defense, I think pace is evident also for sure.
Yeah, we see that definitely happen to Michigan State. Even this year, we see it. I mean, teams will kind of do that, or just occasionally, So,
Yeah.
well, if you need your windows cleaned, make sure you head over to the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. They do fantastic work. You get 10% off as a listener of the show, just by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. Even if you're not in the city of Grand Rapids, anywhere nearby, you can absolutely get that. Had Troy and his team come out even in February. I don't know where Ryan is. I think you're down south somewhere, aren't you? Like somewhere warm.
I'm actually in New Jersey.
Oh, you're not even. So you probably are getting pounded by snow as well.
It has not been ideal. I did escape the snow. I was out in Utah all of last week, but I did experience some of the snow before I left.
Yeah. Well, I think even I think someone just told me Charlotte, North Carolina had like almost 2 feet of snow, like 22 inches. So, it's been a weird winter. Well, anyway, Squeegee Squad Grand Rapids can take care of you. So head on over and go to our support page to get a link for that at the Final Four on theschedule.com/support. So another big thing that's going on in college basketball, it has been obviously evolving a lot. Professional athletes coming back. We've had professionals for a couple of years now coming over from Europe, China, even, all over. Now we're getting American professional leagues, let's just say, because the G League. And now we're getting a player, who joins Alabama, who played some NBA game. Or did he play? He played just in the G League. But I think there's someone who's filing to try and get it who actually played some NBA games. What do you think that does long term? Yeah. What do you think that does long term to college basketball? I mean, Jay Bills might say it doesn't matter. People are still going to enjoy the sport. They're still going to be watching because ultimately, just like with the professional athletes in the Olympics, people ultimately don't really care if they're amateurs or not. Do you think that's the same in college, or do you think it's something a little different, unique?
I love Jay, first of all.
We do too. He's been on the show a bunch of times. We love him too.
That's my guy. And he might be right, but it doesn't mean we can't be upset about it, and we can't try to revolt and be upset and kind of stake our claim and share our opinions with the people that run the sport. I think long term, I'm not that worried because what I think is happening right now. First off, I'm against it all. I'm like not all of it. I'm against the G League guys, the NBA players who specifically left college. Charles Bediako is a good example. Alabama, who by the way 1-2 with Charles Bediako, which is objectively hilarious. He leaves Alabama, forgoes all of his college eligibility that he has left to go to the draft. He signs Exhibit 10 deals. I think he got converted to 1-2A. He played in professional leagues all over. He played in the G League game 4 days before he got his TRO granted and then went to back to Alabama. Like, he knew what he was getting himself into, where the international players, I think, is a stickier situation. It really isn't the one size fits all, because think about the way young teenage development goes overseas, right? Or here, start with. The best 17, 18-year-olds go to college. They're 5 stars. They go to Kentucky, right, Kansas, Michigan State, etc., whatever. They go to the best colleges they want to, and then they go to the NBA, majority of them. Overseas, the best players at age 16, 17, 18, they go into professional development systems because college athletics are a thing, but it's not the highest level that you can get to in your development path. So them going at 17, 18 to play for Barcelona or Barcelona's B team is the equivalent of someone going to Michigan State or someone going to Kansas or someone going to Louisville, wherever, like playing college basketball at a high level. So I think allowing quote-unquote professionals from overseas up to a certain age, maybe it's up to 19 or up to 20, the age of a college freshman or sophomore, and only having maybe max 2 years eligibility in college is probably the way to go about that. There are guys that are a lot older, which I think they're like 23 coming over for the first time as freshmen or sophomores. Makes zero sense, obviously. And then also on the other hand, the question you asked, I actually am not that worried long term. I think it's more of a short term issue, because I think what the NCAA is doing right now is a lot of things are going through courts, TROs, things that are above their head, and they can't do anything about legal court hearings. They're doing their best. They're trying to fight the Bediako case. Amari Bailey is the UCLA player that played 10 NBA games and is trying to come back. I hope they're fighting that, if it's even a possibility right now. I think they're doing what they can to a reasonable extent for now. They're being very nonverbal about their opinion on majority of it. They have said barely a couple of things because they're letting the season play out, and it's not this widespread issue yet. And this offseason, they're going to have their work cut out for them, and I think they know that. So I'm optimistically hopeful for the long-term outlook, but short-term, it's way too vague and just grab and go and do whatever you want. So,
well, and there's a theory that, and you're absolutely right about the NCAA being more or less powerless to stop this. That's the truth. Under antitrust law, they're going to take L's as far as we want to go. But and that's something we've talked about with Jay actually at some length the last couple summers. But there's a theory that the NCAA is actually okay with this stuff because it looks so bad and so ridiculous that they think it might be the only thing that spurs congressional action. So we'll see. But that is one school of thought that's out there. Wanted to turn to the actual game itself for a moment. And we've got 2 unbeatens left. Very different ends of the Division I spectrum. When we talk about Arizona, who's unbeaten and leading the Big 12, and then a little closer to home for us, Miami of Ohio, who's unbeaten and winning everything in the MAC so far. First off, do you think either realistically can get through the regular season unbeaten? I would imagine one has a better shot than the other, but I'm interested in your thoughts.
I think that they both definitely can. They've shown nothing but the ability to win every game possible, especially with both them, the games they've won, right? Miami has been ridiculously resilient in games, like to a surprising level, and just so clutch down.
Especially lately. Yeah.
It's crazy. It is absolutely insane. So you have to, and it's been 3 or 4 different times, so you have to consider that as like they can do that. That's fine. They've also gotten past the best teams in their conference. They have to play a couple of them again. They don't have to play Akron again, which is obviously a huge win.
Right.
I think Buffalo is up next for them, which is tough. Bowling Green again, but they have shown the ability to beat all these teams, so why not? Arizona, very similarly, in every capacity, they're in the best conference in the country, especially at the top. So it's not going to be easy. They still have to play Kansas, Texas Tech, BYU, Houston, all in a row, and then Kansas and Iowa State again. Like, my guess is that they both at least lose one game in the regular season.
Sure.
I actually think Miami has the better chance. I'm not sure if you were leaning one way or the other there, but simply because
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. The Arizona schedule is insane. It's tough.
Yep.
They have shown the ability to win at BYU in the toughest of possible atmospheres, even though BYU has looked like they can't beat those great teams. Still a good team and tough place to win. It's not going to be easy for them. I think they have to go to Houston in a couple of weeks also, and Iowa State's tough, and Texas Tech is awesome. But I think they both can. I don't think either of them will. I would take my chances that they each lose one game. Maybe Arizona loses 2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the things that play in Miami's favor, obviously they're not going up against a murderer's row the way that Arizona is. But what you just said a bit ago is important. When you look at even relative for their conference, the teams they're already done with, it looks a little more likely to me. For them, but God, now here's another question. It's a little early for this analysis, but you're starting to see it talked about. Let's say Miami runs the table, gets into the MAC tournament, and somehow slips on the banana peel. You think they get in as an at-large?
Yeah, I think they're definitely fine. If they go 32-0 in regular season, they have to be a lock to get in. If there's a team that goes undefeated in the regular season, they could be in the SWAC for all I care, and they don't get into the tournament. That's a real problem with the system we have. There are problems that are against mid-majors. I don't think that's a fear of mine. I actually think, say they lose to Buffalo or Bowling Green, one of the better MAC teams, and then they lose into Akron in the conference finals, I still think they would get in with 2 losses as like a 10 seed or an 11 seed. If they lose one game and it's in the MAC tournament, I think they're still going to be perfectly fine as like a 7 or 8 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, when we've had Dom on, who's America's #1 bracketologist, he said the same thing that you did as well, that Miami, although they can't slip up too much, it does depend on who they lose to. If they lose to a bottom feeder in the MAC somehow, of course that changes the equation. But if they lose in the championship, he's almost certain that they'll make it in, barring a lot of other bid thieves in other leagues. Something weird happens, or Oregon wins the Big Ten or something like that. So, so what do you think's going on in Kansas? So I know you've been Daryn Peterson is clearly like, well, I don't know. I think Rods feels this way too. But I mean, he seems clearly like the best player in college basketball.
Oh yeah,
I mean, high freshman. I mean, you said that like the
I saw
second you
him
saw
in
him.
their exhibition game. I can't remember. Maybe it was Louisville. They played. I can't remember which, but it was an exhibition game that was televised, and I'd seen little bits of him in AAU. But watching that game, I thought, this is a smaller Kobe Bryant. This is an insanely talented player. So yeah, I think he's the best player in college basketball.
Yeah,
But it's weird, right? Kansas is great when he's on the floor. They're a good team when he's not there, and he's there half the time. I mean, it doesn't make much sense. What's going on is just it's like this chronic season-long thing. What's your take on sort of him and sort of, I think probably you agree this prospect, he's the first number one in the draft, I think, probably for coming up. But what is going on with Kansas, and how would you even like predict what Kansas is going to do in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, that question is great. You can't, because you don't know if how is he going to play? How can he reasonably? They're playing tonight, by the way, so they're playing in 2 hours. Maybe he plays 40 minutes, and that'd be crazy against Texas Tech after playing the BYU game. But how can you reasonably expect him to play on a Friday and a Sunday, and then two back-to-backs again the next weekend if they're still like? It's very, very tough. 100%. He's gonna go number one in the draft because he's the only player in the country that it looks like he's playing a different sport. It looks like he's playing a completely different game. Things are way too easy for him. He is the smoothest of smooth operators. His game IQ and exploiting space is absolutely next level. His handle is great. His switching hands off to off hands and finishing at the rack is great. He is unbelievable. He very much like a smaller Kobe Bryant, or maybe even the same size. He looks kind of lanky and tall right now. He's been unbelievable. He's fantastic. The Kansas side, the muscle cramps, quote unquote injury, whatever you want to call it, side of it is interesting. I think it's gotten to a point that, first off, you're not going to get a fully healthy Daryn Peterson in his entire college career. I think it's like a Kyrie Irving situation. That ship has kind of sailed, and you just have to accept that. The muscle cramps, I think, have gotten to a point where him, his agent and family and coaching staff and medical staff and Kansas athletic staff have all agreed if he tweaks anything, he feels anything in a game, shut him down for the rest of the game. Can't let him protect him to whatever cost he needs and we need and whatever. He's the greatest asset because not only do you want him to be healthy to play throughout the season on the Kansas side of things, but they need him to play for entertainment purposes also, as silly as that sounds, but they're protecting him as much as they can. And I think that there are a lot more decision makers than people realize. People are like, I see people questioning his will to compete and win. I think that's crazy because look at this game, for example. He came out with a vengeance on College game day against the number one versus number two, AJ DeBanza and BYU. And he said, this is my moment. Like, this is absolutely my moment. There were moments when AJ was switched on him. It was a one-on-one. He waved off ball screens. And he said, go away. Yep. I am getting us a bucket. And he did exactly that. So I don't question his competitiveness at all. He's a gamer. He's always been that in all of his AAU or EYBL and high school days. I think it just kind of is what it is for Kansas at this point. They're a top 10 team, 15 team in the country with him, but they're not going to have him at 100%. And if they do, they won't have him the game after that or 2 games after that. So we hope for the best because I think from a neutral perspective, you want to see him play. You want to see him play as much as we can. NBA personnel, NBA fans, college fans, everyone wants to see him play unless you're playing against Kansas. It's that simple.
So a team that I'm finding increasingly interesting as this year goes on in trying to understand where they are versus where we thought they'd be. And I'm saying this as somebody that picked them to easily win the Big Ten this year is Purdue. Mm. Are you surprised by their relative struggles so far? Did you see them? I know in the preseason it was generally Purdue and Houston were seen as the two kind of co-number ones. Did you have them there coming into the season? Are you surprised they're where they are?
So I had Houston at 1, Purdue at 2, but again, thin margins that were, they were the number 1 and 2 team. Yes and no. Their defense was always going to be their issue. I didn't think it'd be this much of an issue, especially in back-to-back games and closing possessions versus a struggling UCLA team. And then obviously Indiana, they did not look like themselves. I still think that they are still within the title contention race on the back end of it, obviously. Their defense is alarming. Their offense has gotten way too cold, way too fast. I think they just lack the NBA talent per se, offensive firepower, and explosive, dynamic offensive weapons that other teams have, right? The Iowa State game was interesting. I was there. They got their ass kicked. But Braden played relatively well early on, and everyone else was miserable. And Braden isn't this explosive NBA star, per se, that you can really reasonably predict. So I think it's very challenging for them to beat athletic teams that are able to put up absolute numbers no matter what. When Keaton Wagler gives you 46, what are you doing in return? And they had no answer. Like, they couldn't do anything about it, and they couldn't defend him. I also think that's part of the scheme thing, and Matt Painter refused to blitz and rotate and let someone else beat them because he said, well, they have shooters elsewhere, and Keaton Wagler will give it up and then someone else will score. I'm like, well, Keaton Wagler's got 40 on you right now. Maybe you can switch something up. But I just think they lack a little bit like that. Illinois is a good example. They have a Keaton Wagler where other teams like Purdue don't, and their defense hasn't been good enough. So I worry about them for sure. I don't think they'll win the national title, but again, March is and the bracket is full of matchup dependency and whatever. And the Big Ten is a struggle for them right now, but there's 5 teams in the Big Ten who are the top of the Big Ten, and they're still one of them for sure. So
yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, it's starting to remind me increasingly of where they were last year, and they really struggled down the back half of Big Ten play. Mm-hmm. And then they show up in the NCAA tournament, get to the Sweet 16, probably should have taken out Houston. And you said, where did that come from? Or where has that been for the last month and a half? That's the only thing that's got me hesitating on declaring Final Four hopes dead for that team. But it sounds to me like you're of the opinion that you're not sure that there's anything much that they can do to solve their issues because it's a roster talent thing as opposed to anything that's fixable.
I think there are some rotational fixes and defensive scheme fixes that they can do, but I don't think anything that's like wildly drastic and going to change them back to the national title contender that you thought they were a month ago, right? It just kind of is what it is. I am with you where I wouldn't discredit them because of 2 weeks where go look at UConn 2023.
Right.
They had a really rough 2.5 weeks in Big East play in January. And then all of a sudden they steamrolled through the rest of it and won the national championship, and no one even came close with them. That was a weird year in the tournament. Also, Final Four, 9 seed, 6 seed, 3 seed, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But again, this happens. It happens every now and then. So I'm looking at their next few games. Obviously, they're going to play some heavy Big Ten teams, and their next few games are going to be massive to tell us the truth behind them going the rest of the way because it's already February. So.
Well, if you want the truth when it comes to gutters and need your gutters fixed, head on over to the Brothers Who Just Do Gutters. They can take care of you whether you're on the east or the west side of the state. Make sure they're functioning properly. You get 10% off by just mentioning Final Four. Of course, you can do that at our support page at the Final Fours on the schedule.com/support. And also head over to Edge so you get a really sweet hoodie like I've got. They're super comfortable, great pricing, and you get 20% off if you type in Tiff Knots. And I'm sure Ryan's like, the Final Fours on the schedule. What a name for a podcast. We did not workshop that. That's it's a great quote. It's a great quote.
It's a Tom Izzo quote
it's
from
fantastic.
Years ago relating to fan expectations. Too many fans think it's on the schedule, and you actually have to earn your way there. It shouldn't be taken for granted.
It is hard to abbreviate, though. So TFFINOTS.
Yeah, in my head, I was just calling it Tiff Knots. Exactly.
That's what we call Tiff Knots. But if I just say that, people can't even type it out because then my daughter's like, actually, it's Knots. So anyway, so give us a little premier. So you're looking at Trapezoid Excellence. You got all the analytics. We all kind of know the top teams. Who do you have outside the top 15 you think is going to make a run in Elite Eight or Final Four? Surprise team.
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think that the top, give or take 14-ish teams in the country are firmly the top 14. Maybe there's a one or two kind of on the border in or out, but it feels like the top 3 seed lines this year are going to be similar to last year where you get a lot of chalk in the first couple of rounds and then they all have to play each other, which is very good for the Sweet 16 Elite 8. But it might bode for similar first weekend as we got last year. But I also think the mid-majors are dangerous again, more dangerous than they were last year. I'm not just saying this because they're fun, but I think St. Louis is for real. I think they're the best mid-major that I've seen since 2020 Dayton. They're on pace to contend for a 3 seed if they run through the A10. They end up 33-1. Their one loss is against Stanford, when they like had the wildest last 3 seconds I've ever seen in a moonshot off of a steal to win for Stanford. They really could be 34-0 at that point and be a 2 seed or a 1 seed if you're undefeated that realistically. So I like St. Louis a lot, like the way they play. I love Josh Schertz. He's going to be a power guy next year for sure.
Absolutely. We called that 2 years ago. He brought his Indiana State team into Breslin, and MSU won. It was relatively comfortably in the end, but that was a very competitive game most of the way. And I said, I had this discussion with somebody the other day. No shade to Darren DeVries, but would Indiana have been better off with Schertz, keeping him in state, than they were going out and getting to DeVries? It's questionable at this point, but I'm with you. I think he's going to be a star.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a fantastic mind, and their team is great. I thought he was going to go from Indiana State straight to a power conference, like a lower level power conference team.
We did too.
But
Me too. Yeah.
This is just as good because St. Louis is awesome. I think there's a lot of teams that will need a coach like him, and he'll have his pick of the litter. I think they're great, and I think Virginia is very well built for the tournament. Where you look at how balanced they are, pace wise, offense and defense. They have size. 2 of the best shot blockers in the country. Tez DeRitter, their go-to guy, is getting a lot more dynamic and comfortable being the dude and being on the ball a lot more. And they have 4 or 5 different guards who all come from underrated avenues. 3 of them from mid-major level, and then one of them was an underrated 5'8" freshman recruit from down in Virginia, Chance Mallory. And they're all awesome. They're all great shot makers and shot takers. They're balanced. They're good ball hawks defensively. I really, really like how Virginia plays. They've been shakier than I wanted them to be the last 2 weeks in ACC play, but I still hold my stock there, and I think that they could be an underrated team because of maybe a couple of shaky games.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I think, with the way Tony Bennett's regime ended there, to me at least, as someone who tries to follow the landscape pretty closely nationally, they sort of fell into the background a little bit. But Odom is doing a hell of a job this season in terms of getting them firmly back in the picture. I assume that you think there's nothing he's doing that's not sustainable, that you would expect that Virginia is going to remain a consistent factor in that league, right?
Yeah, I mean, he did that at UMBC. He didn't do it for so long, but he did that UMBC. They beat Virginia the 1 seed, which is objectively amazing and hilarious. Full circle. Yeah. But then he did it at VCU and he did it at Utah State immediately at both schools. So no reason to believe it's not going to hold.
I want real quick before because I know you got a heart out, but
sure.
I noticed you, and I think you mentioned it, that you took a trip out to Utah State. And you just mentioned Ryan Odom, made me think of this. They've had, how many coaches have they had in the last even 8 years? It's several guys, right?
It's insane. They've had 4 in the last 5 years, and they've all made the tournament in those 5 years. Right. It makes 0 sense. I tried to ask them, like, what is in the, even when they have complete roster turnover, it does not matter. And their team is probably the best they've had amongst all those years, maybe since 2020. I asked them, like, what's in the water? What is going on here? And they're like, we just know how to do it. I'm like, that's not an answer.
That's not an answer.
It doesn't help me understand anything, but okay, thanks.
Well, is it, because I don't know much about it, is it the same AD that's made all those hires?
Yeah, it is the athletic administration.
Well, that's it then. He obviously knows coaching talent. That's the only thing I can think of.
It's become this stepping stone now for not just regional guys. Ryan Odom's a Virginia guy through and through, UMBC, VCU. He says, you know what? Utah State is a slight step up, and then it'll get me to, he's originally from Cincy. He went there, so he'll probably be there next year. But guys take it, and Ryan Odom went to Virginia. Jared Calhoun is the Cincy guy, who's there now, who will probably go there. It's a stepping stone, a national stepping stone. So you could see guys like Tony Skinn that's a George Mason guy through and through, or someone like that kind of go over there that you would never think would be in Utah, but it's become a national landscape stepping stone.
Right.
Yeah, and just finally, one last, staying out west, Gonzaga is interesting because, that's a team that we hear a lot about, and then they enter league play, and they sort of get forgotten until tournament time, and then it's like, oh, Gonzaga's a 3 seed or whatever. The last time I think anyone here, Michigan State, Big Ten sort of paid attention, they got just demolished by Michigan back in late November, I think, in that whatever it was, that tournament out in Vegas for money. What do you see with them? I mean, the West, is this a team that Mark Few is actually going to be able to take away, as you think, or do you think they're limited?
Yeah, they're a team that I was high on before the season and all year out in Vegas. They They lost by 40 to Michigan. That was when Michigan was playing like the greatest team of all time. And
Yeah,
that's exactly what they look like. I know you guys can even admit that. Because they're not that right now, and they haven't been playing that good at least. But one loss, they've beaten good teams. They beat Kentucky and UCLA pretty handily, and some other good quality teams also. Like, I firmly believe Gonzaga is still a dark horse title contender, Final Four contender for sure. They will get slept on because they're going to people. Oh, it's Gonzaga again. They're back with one loss or two losses, and they're a 2 seed. They're definitely frauds. And they go to the Sweet 16 or better every single year, except for last year when they were an 8 seed on a rough year, and they had to play, I think it was Houston in the second round. And I just think that people always do this with Gonzaga. I'm always on the pro side of Gonzaga, and it usually ends up going pretty well for me in that sense in bracket terms. But they're a very, very good team. They're deep, they're big, they're strong. They're super, super old also. A lot of their guys have missed full years with torn ACLs and big injuries. So a lot of their guys are like 23, 24, 25. I think Ty and Grant Foster turned 26. Like, they're old experience, and they are going to kick the shit out of somebody pretty early on in the tournament. So.
All right. Well, we know you got to get out of here, so we really appreciate you coming on the Final Four on the schedule. Remind everyone to check out the Blue-Blooded Podcast. Find Ryan on Instagram at RyanHammer9. He's got videos all the time on various interesting analytic stuff or crazy visits to college campuses. So next time you come up to East Lance, you got to make sure you say hi. And we'd love to walk you around, and
Absolutely.
You might want to wait when it's not quite as much snow. So maybe in a couple weeks, maybe when
the Michigan State fans, not be surprised. They think I hate Michigan State. Contrary to that opinion, I do not at all, and I definitely need to get to East Lansing. So,
all right. Well, we'd love to have you again. Thanks so much for being on the show.
For sure, I appreciate it. Have a good one. All right.